Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours. Is it just me, or are you all suddenly thinking, what's with the deluge of new developments that we've seen from major mailbox providers recently? Because there's been a lot of them over the last few months. There's Apple Mail tabs, AI-generated summaries, AI-powered personal assistants, changes to inbox storage, subscription managers, inbox placement sorted by engagement. And it's perfect timing because Black Friday is just around the corner. So everyone might be starting to panic about the impact to your email programs.
Good news is you're not alone. We've been getting a flood of questions from our listeners about all these new developments. So Danielle and I have pulled together a very special hosts-only Email After Hours episode to unbox them. Where, what are the most important changes? How are they likely to affect your subscribers' behavior? And how do you need to respond? So let's jump in. And Danielle, because we're friends, let me throw a really contentious opening question at you. So April Mullen, who's well known in our industry, recently put out this LinkedIn post, which basically read, tip, put unsubscribe in the search and anything that is commercial can be deleted in one fell swoop. Wow. Is this what a highly respected email commentator and advocate is saying? Geez, are we screwed?
Well, I think, frankly, if a subscriber does this, they didn't really have a lot of interest in your messages or really their inbox to begin with. But there are still far too many senders that are doing generic batch and blast without any real consideration of their subscribers' needs or interests. And I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised that unsubscribe rates aren't higher than they are. And as we're going to talk about later, a little bit of a teaser, Gmail's managed subscriptions page essentially already is doing this at this point, right, Guy?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it.
So the marketers that we work with are mostly wondering why mailbox providers are suddenly rolling out a whole host of new functionalities. Let's discuss kind of the why first. Guy, what do you think?
I think we've probably got to try and see things through their lens. And, if you think back to webinars we've had over the last year, and Gmail and Yahoo and Microsoft have all told us that, they're very comfortable with the idea that legitimate permission-based email marketing has a place in the world. And, perhaps even that they like it because it encourages their customers to spend time in their inboxes where, guess what, they're exposed to their advertising. So, in my mind, almost all these recent developments are actually intended in the minds of Microsoft and Gmail and Yahoo to provide email users with improved inbox experiences so they spend more time there. And they might not be getting all of them right, but you can be certain they're testing the impact of these changes. And they'll roll back the ones that aren't working if they see they're having a negative impact on the way that their customers are engaging with their emails. But I think for the ones that are here to stay, email marketers are going to have to adapt. They're going to have to suck it up. Almost applying, I've been thinking about, it's almost like they're going to have to apply SEO strategies to their email content, to make sure that AI surfaces the correct elements in these summaries. And who knows, we'll likely even see a whole new sub-industry focused on how email content should be optimized so that the AI crawlers and indexing and summarizing delivers the most accurate results possible. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, Guy's first hot take of the episode, SEO is back, baby. Let's talk about the industry updates. And the most recent, and possibly the biggest, perceived bummer update lately, this is the big recent news from Gmail, which is the retirement of Google Postmaster Tools V1, with Google Postmaster Tools V2 now the source of Gmail's reputation truth. And just for a little bit of context for everybody there, V1 is the old trusty dashboard that included a color-coded bad to high reputation data set for both sending IPs and domains. V2 is what many have been calling the compliance dashboard, which includes a lot of the same information, but there's also this main page that is a pass-fail, compliant, non-compliant list that aligns with all of the requirements for Gmail deliverability. So V1 is the old one, V2 is that compliance dashboard. And Guy, before I become the Eeyore of this update, why don't you tell us what your opinion is of this change?
So some of the upsides, we've actually got a more detailed compliance dashboard now. I think it's going to be really helpful in terms of measuring and resolving the challenges which are most important to Gmail. I think the way they've gone around their delivery error reporting has definitely improved. I would describe that as enhanced. And I think one thing that not many people have commented on is that suddenly there's plenty of user-friendly documentation too, which is a big change. What are your thoughts?
I think everything you've said is right, especially about the feedback loop functionality. There's just so much more data in there, even for senders that haven't implemented Gmail's feedback ID header. There's just info in there where there wasn't before. And Gmail themselves have kind of indicated that they don't think presenting that color-coded high or bad reputation status is really helpful for senders. It doesn't provide a lot of visibility into what Gmail subscribers are doing or thinking. But for me personally, I work with lots of senders who are actively trying to recover their Gmail reputation or going through an IP warm-up or something where they really have to get every little nugget from Gmail where they can. And I have found historically that IP and domain reputation data really helpful in just terms of a gut check in cases like these. Now, of course, we'll still be able to monitor, but we're going to have to really rely on other metrics like seed tests through Everest or, ironically, to your next point, open rates.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, almost ironically in my mind, I was thinking about this and I wonder if it actually presents an argument in favor of repurposing open rates, because they do continue to act as a very solid inbox placement indicator. If you're generating good Gmail open rates, let's say above 30%, for example, you're almost certainly inboxing. Whereas if you're down in sort of single digit open rates, you almost certainly aren't. So, maybe it's going to be a case of taking, some of your existing data points and thinking about them in new ways.
Completely. Who knew that this directional data was going to become so critical once again? But that is just the beginning of the recent updates from Gmail. So let's talk about their kind of new-ish manage subscriptions view, which we touched on very briefly in the icebreaker. Guy, tell us what the manage subscriptions page is and what marketers need to be aware of.
Well, I know that this one's got a lot of our customers really unhappy. So it's a pretty simple concept. You've now got a tab in your Gmail inbox where you can basically look at all of the programs that are sending emails to you, ordered by the ones that are sending most email to you. And, basically at the click of a button, you can unsubscribe from all of them. Yay. No, not. I think for me, one unhelpful aspect is that Gmail hasn't been particularly open about the time period we're talking about. So, it feels like it's sort of 3 or 4 months. And, if you're then saying, listen, you've received 20 emails from this sender over, 16 or 17 weeks, to be honest, I don't feel like that's unreasonable. And I think that it's here. So senders need to think about ways of helping their subscribers reduce frequency. I think it talks to several best practices that we've touched on many times before, because at the end of the day, having their subscribers receive less messages is better than receiving no messages, for sure. So I think, providing the ability to opt down as an option in their preference centers, snooze functionality that allows subscribers to take temporary breaks from senders' programs is probably going to become even more important. And I think one thing I would say is, just because your unsubscribe rates are going up, make sure you're seeing the bigger picture. You absolutely want to evaluate the impact of those increased opt-outs versus almost certainly decreasing spam complaints to get the full picture. I feel like the two will offset each other. Opt-outs are neutral from a deliverability point of view, complaints are negative, so it's a win.
And just to your point about the timeline, true, they haven't been very explicit with what recently is, which I think is the verbiage they use. But in original mock-ups of that page, they did use quarterly. So unless they've changed it, or maybe they have, or they don't just want to be super blunt about recently, we can go with a couple months, I think is fair. On this front, I also want to mention that the unsubscribe options, the way that this page is laid out, is both senders are sorted alphabetically and by frequency. So if you have a from address that begins with an A, for example, and you send more than 20 emails in any given period, whatever recently means, you are going to be at the top of that list, right? So there's an alphabetical element, and there's also a frequency element to how unsubscribe options are being sorted. So just take a good look at your own mailbox here to get a feel for what that is. One more point. It looks like these options are unsubscribe is being presented by the from address as opposed to just the sending domain. So I'm wondering if some senders are going to try to game the system by creating hundreds of different from addresses that go way down like updates. So you're low alphabetically.
Ooh, you're so sneaky.
I'm not sneaky. I'm afraid. I'm thinking 2 steps ahead here. And this would be, of course, in an attempt to lower their unsubscribes and, have subscribers opt out from only a single mail stream versus their entire email program. But I think you'd agree with me. Don't do that. Don't do that, please.
Okay, sort of moving on with our litany of misery, also freshly announced is that Gmail, moving forward, users will have their promotions tab sorted by most relevant by default, and then they can choose to revert to or sort by most recent. So what on earth does this mean? And by the way, you're also going to have nudges. WTF? We'll answer that question too. So in a nutshell, what this means is that Gmail is prioritizing email engagement over all else. And of course, this comes down to how Gmail actually thinks about engagement, and senders need to learn to think like Gmail because it's not the same metrics that you monitor in your own campaign reporting. And interestingly, Gmail have just updated their bulk sender requirements guidelines. And this latest update clarifies that they don't monitor opens. They're explicit about this. What they do consider is factors like recency, most clicked emails, most frequently used contacts. We also know that organic factors like forwards and replies are highly significant. And you're going to have to think about how to amplify those behaviors if you're going to be looking like a highly engaged sender of emails. Now, nudges are going to be very useful. And, these are basically going to be giving subscribers little prompts about things like time-sensitive promotions, for example, when they start, when they finish. But senders are going to have to be really, really intentional in terms of designing for these nudges, and they're going to have to use very clearly defined offer windows. They're going to have to be incorporating schema-ready elements to support how Gmail goes about surfacing these deals. And above all, you are going to have to be very, very honest about the nature of these deals that you're promoting. More about that in a moment.
And I think just on the nudges, they are essentially presented as a card at the top of the promotions tab, and they take up a lot of real estate. Like, they really do take up a lot of real estate. So this is something, both the most relevant sorting by default and these nudges, these are being gradually rolled out. So keep an eye on your promotions tabs everybody. Finally, Gmail has also introduced a purchase view, which is basically a consolidated purchase tracker page. So it's not a new tab exactly, in the same way that manage subscriptions isn't a new tab. It's a new view that you can select kind of in the left side drop down in your Gmail mailbox. What do you think of the purchase view, Guy?
I'm a fan of this one. When your inbox looks like mine, having all your purchases and delivery notifications in one place can only be a good thing, don't you think?
Agreed. I feel like, again, I'm like, I'm just bringing the downer energy to this episode. But so I agree. But I will say, in reviewing these updates with a couple clients, they've raised that they have observed errors here. And really, those errors are discrepancies between delivery dates, expected delivery dates for something that may have already been delivered, discrepancies between what the carrier says versus what they themselves, the brand, say. So it's the beginning. This is just rolling out. It's a little early on. So it can be a little bit messy. That makes sense. Just recommending that marketing teams keep in close touch with customer service on this one and just monitor for any feedback, because I assume this will look a little bit different depending on the carrier. And also whether the individual user gives permission for Gmail to fetch information from those carriers, which a colleague of ours actually just saw in her own mailbox. So it's going to be individualized as well.
So not only are you Eeyore, I think there's a healthy dollop of Piglet going on there as well, because I mean, Eeyore was just gloomy, but Piglet's like seriously worried.
Yeah, that's a 100% accurate.
Anyhow, another one. This one isn't really new, but let's also talk about Gmail's auto-inserted annotations. So, yeah, this is when you see notes like 30% off or expires today, those little green code snippets or the insertion of images from your emails that Gmail themselves implement on behalf of senders. And originally, the idea of annotations was that senders could do this themselves, but take-up wasn't particularly spectacular. And I think Gmail got tired of waiting for senders to implement annotations, so they've been using their AI to do it, whether senders want it or not. And it's definitely becoming more and more prevalent. I think it's fair to say that we've got different ideas, maybe, Danielle, around how we think marketers should respond to this one. I think, in my mind, probably 90% of all the annotations I see in the promotions tab are now auto-inserted by Gmail. Probably only about 10% are actually intentionally put there by senders. And I think, most of these auto-annotations are probably well-meaning. But there are two major shortcomings. I think, one is that they replace the email's preview text. You covered this one already. So all of that hard work you did with your pre-headers, and especially if they're complementing your subject line, is down the pan. And two, they aren't always correct. I've seen recent examples of annotations showing offers that have already expired. And, if you were that sender, you'd be feeling a bit sore about that. So my take is I think all senders are going to have to implement annotations to ensure that the correct content is displayed. And also, I think there's one really big, one particularly strong use case, which is for time-sensitive messages. I think, the big risk of a subject line telling subscribers that, hey, deal ends at midnight, is that if you only see that message tomorrow, it's not relevant anymore, is it? And you're going to be far more likely to delete that email or generate a spam complaint. So, maybe how about showing the time-sensitive content using a code snippet with the date time parameters that control when that snippet displays, and that eliminates all the risk of the irrelevance created by these time-sensitive promotions. I mean, what's not to like?
I think in my experience, in terms of adoption, senders adopting this, applying, because you have to apply to Gmail to have your annotations even recognized. So it's not like you can just put the code in and have them show up. There's a relatively simple application process, but there are good reasons that marketers can't get annotations prioritized in terms of their time or their code initiative. So very often we are talking about a subset of a subset of a subset of subscribers that see annotations, even once the marketer has gone through all of the effort to assert the code themselves. So A, the subscriber has to be using Gmail's mobile app or Gmail on desktop. B, they have to have tabs enabled because annotations will only appear in the promotions tab. So if they don't have tabs enabled, they're not going to see it anyway. And then beyond that, not all subscribers are going to be selected to be shown annotations. Even if the sender has applied annotations consistently across their template and to their audience, that just doesn't mean that all subscribers are going to see them the same way. So at the end of the day, even if you have this correctly implemented, it makes it really hard to test whether or not annotations are effective and thus difficult to get it prioritized in terms of hours on the business side. But at the end of the day, you are right, Guy. The only way for marketers to establish control over what the annotations say is to self-assert, regardless of how many or few people actually see them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can agree to disagree on this one. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. Having said that, I do think that Gmail is ultimately going to force email marketers down this road. If you think about it, the same kind of code schema is going to be required to make sure they're showing the right deal cards, they're showing the right nudges. In the end, it's at your own risk if you don't. Now, before our listeners think today's episode is only about Gmail, let's change tack slightly. And one of the things I'd like us to talk about is Yahoo's catch-up feature. So they released this mid-year. It lets users catch up on all their unread emails. It's got some AI-powered summaries, which are providing scannable email previews, giving users an option to either delete those emails or keep them in the inbox. And to be honest, I'm not completely in love with the gamification they're using here. There's like a celebratory screen for users to see how many emails they deleted and how quickly they did it. And I'm not sure that's entirely helpful for email marketers. But, I do know that Yahoo's intention is to help especially the younger generations, Gen Z and millennials, who apparently regularly miss appointments because their inboxes are so disorganized. But maybe this just feels a little bit like Tinder for email marketing, I wonder.
Tinder, as in the online dating? Finally, it's not just me talking about online dating on this podcast. I'm thrilled. Finally, it took us, 2 years to get here? I have a question for you, Guy. Are you an inbox zero person?
I try, but it's hard.
Because I'm wondering about that. I wonder if, because I am. I love a clean inbox with nothing in it. So I wonder if that Yahoo catch-up feature would work better for me. You've also flagged another story that's generating a lot of industry chatter lately, Perplexity, which is a free AI-powered answer engine, essentially, recently launched an AI-powered email assistant. So does that mean that your AI-generated email is going to be sent to an AI-generated assistant that then decides in turn whether it responds or not?
Oh, man, you couldn't make it up, could you? But seriously, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think, as you say, Perplexity is an AI-powered search engine. They're focused on providing direct, accurate, and sourced answers by summarizing web content and academic papers. And so it's a bit like ChatGPT, but perhaps more focused on providing factual, real-time information with citations. And Email Assistant basically brings an AI agent into your inbox. It already supports both Outlook and Gmail. And then manages your emails. It schedules your meetings. It even drafts replies to threads that need responding to. And, at the moment, it's not cheap. They're talking about $200 per month as part of a Perplexity Max subscription. But it's also claiming inbox productivity uplifts of anything between 3x and 18x, which is quite, impressive. So it's almost certainly another AI-flavored reality check for email marketers to wrestle with, that's for sure.
I can't keep up. I'm grateful for this podcast because we just got to summarize everything. We talked a lot today about AI, how mailbox providers are using AI. We have to ask whether all of this AI driven, dare I say, meddling in the inbox may ultimately see lawsuits brought against, whoever it might be. A customer sues a retailer for false advertising or deceptive marketing practices. Maybe somebody's not very happy with a mailbox provider for implementing AI that changes the way that their offer is presented. So kind of alters their marketing. Our good friend and peer, Chad White, who has been on the podcast a couple of times, recently wrote maybe my favorite article about this. What do you think of it, Guy? Is he right?
I think Chad's article is really, really interesting, and I'd encourage all our listeners to have a read. But in essence, he's basically saying, like we've been talking about today, subject lines and preview text are being replaced with AI-generated summaries, or at times they're even being completely overridden by AI extractions and deal cards. And his point is that, if those AI summaries ever misrepresent the original content, are we going to start seeing brands suing mailbox providers, for making claims which they're not capable of delivering? And then, I think we've already seen this in some forms this year. We've seen class actions being brought against senders in some US states for using misleading subject lines. In fact, literally today, Danielle, I saw another one. And then you've got in Europe, in France, the CNIL, their regulator, has fined Gmail for those sort of sponsored content emails that feature at the top of your promotions tab. The kickback is starting, isn't it? And I think senders are going to have to be very, very careful, especially about this, principle of, the risk of misleading subject lines. That's for sure.
Agreed. We've covered a lot of ground today, Guy. What do you think about leaving our audience with some practical suggestions that they can use to help address these new challenges? Should we just go back and forth and toss out a couple of our recommendations?
Well, I think right at the top, we said, especially with these automated summaries, senders are going to have to start thinking SEO to ensure that their email content is set up and structured in such a way that the summaries surface the right bits of content in the summaries.
And maybe also like a sub bullet to that, don't do all image emails, especially because those summaries probably can't be generated or interpreted. And so we may have a bit of a mess in those like auto summarized, especially in Apple, I'm thinking. So don't do all image emails. That is not going to work for a plethora of reasons.
I think, as we said earlier, think about repurposing opens as a deliverability metric. We've been saying this ever since Apple MPP came along. The one good news thing about all of those automatic pixel fires is they only happen if your emails are in the inbox. So it's a great deliverability metric.
I think yours was a good one, Guy. Let subscribers opt down or snooze. The fewer emails that they're receiving, especially if they're failing to engage, the less likely they are to just go ahead and click unsubscribe, or even worse, mark you as spam.
That's right. And I think, focus on amplifying those mailbox provider specific engagement metrics. Think how you can set up your promotions to encourage your subscribers to organically forward them, organically reply to them. That whole add us to your trusted contacts list is suddenly more important than ever.
And back to nudges, design for them. Really be clear and articulate and succinct with the offers, especially if they are time sensitive. So expires today, last chance. Definitely note that, but don't game the system. Don't just put that in there for no reason.
Coming back to Gmail annotations, Danielle, can we compromise and say implement annotations if you can justify the development overhead that's required?
We've found a middle ground, as we always do, Guy.
Wonderful.
I guess start preparing for AI-powered email assistants. Just be on the lookout and be prepared for all of those updates. I think it would be a great idea for us today to link to a couple of these articles, like Yahoo's catch-up feature, Chad's article,
I
the
think so.
perplexity. We'll do that in the show
I'll put
notes, so
my
check out the show
AI
notes.
assistant in touch with yours.
There we go.
Implement Bimmy. If you've been holding back, now's the time. It's cheaper than it was before, and there's complementary options like Apple Business Mail and Gmail Annotations too. That recognition is all important.
And let's do one more, which maybe is self-explanatory, but don't be misleading. Guys, we don't have time to get sued. Look at all of these industry updates that are happening right now. There's enough going on. Be honest, transparent, and avoid legal trouble.
As you say, we've covered a load of ground today. And, while today was a hosts-only episode, we love our email after hours guests, and we're always looking out for new ones to feature on future episodes. So, if you maybe think you can be the wise owl to, my Tigger and Danielle's Eeyore, if you'd like to join us, drop us a comment, ping us on LinkedIn, fill out the guest form linked in the show notes, and we'll put you guys in the hot seat sometime soon. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.
Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.